Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and I want to do a Star Citizen video today, talking specifically about the non-piloting aspects of this game. And the real purpose for doing this is because I think there's a lot of people out there that look at Star Citizen and say, okay, that's a space flight sim. I hate flight sims. I don't want to be a pilot, and just kind of are immediately turned off on the game. So maybe if you fall in that crew, maybe you're some of my PlanetSide subscribers, maybe you are a Star Citizen fan and you've got friends that are just kind of turned off by that idea. Maybe kind of talk about this with them, show them this video, because we might be able to get more people into the game because there's a lot of aspects that don't necessarily revolve immediately around actually flying a spaceship. And in fact, if you're going to be flying some of the bigger ships, you're going to need people on board that aren't going to be the pilot. So let's kind of talk about some of the non-piloting things that you can do in the persistent universe. And the first one that comes to mind for me is an engineer. You know, people that like to kind of tinker with stuff, maybe like to overclock things, test systems, push their limits. Maybe people like to just do repairing in-game. I think about like the crafters, and I think like Minecraft, space engineers, Kerbal Space Program. Just because you don't like to fly a ship doesn't mean you may not enjoy actually working on a ship in this game. There's a lot of different stuff that you can actually do, you know, on a ship or on a planet side that aren't necessarily involving flying. Another one, a more combat-oriented role, could be like becoming a Marine. You know, think about people that play Battlefield or Counter-Strike Go, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual first-person side of this game. But I think people that like that combat side have some things that they can do. You can fly in on a you know, like on a drop ship and board an enemy ship, or maybe you're on a space station and you're just defending that. There are first-person shooter aspects to this that are going to be a lot of fun. Now, for those of you out there that like to be just kind of a part of a team, you know, think about like games like Artemis, where you're all on the bridge of a ship. You know, think about like Star Trek, all the different departments and compartments of a ship where people are working. You've got engineering and science and medical. There are bigger ships in this game that are going to need people filling those roles. You know, if you want to be just working as part of a team towards a common goal, you can do that as a non-pilot and still have a lot of fun with the different things that are going to be available to you. Now, going back to combat a little bit, maybe you like being in a ship, but you don't necessarily like flying it. A lot of these ships actually have turrets available that people are going to need to gun, otherwise they're going to have to use NPCs. So maybe if you're a PlanetSide 2 player and you love shooting, you know, the belly gun of the Liberator, maybe like Battlefield and Call of Duty, you like being the chopper gunner. You know, there's ships. You know, the Retaliator has five turrets on it. You know, the Constellation has 2 turrets on it. The Cutlass and Freelancer both have 1 turret on it. There's a lot of different roles that you can kind of still take advantage of, you know, being in space combat, still firing and doing damage to enemies, still having a good fighting time without actually having to pilot the ship. Maybe you're not good at it, maybe you don't like it, whatever, but you can still kind of be in that environment without having to actually, you know, actually fly the ship. There's more passive things you can do, like you can become a medic, you know, whether that's like in PlanetSide 2 or Battlefield, where it's more combat medic, you know, oriented, or maybe it's going to be more like you sit on board a hospital ship and you get really good at being able to repair people instead of ships. It's kind of tied to the support roles like being an engineer. There's people that are going to keep operations going by keeping your forces going. Now, more on the darker side of the law, you can become a pirate. And a lot of piracy is going to be involved hijacking out in the middle of nowhere in space. So you're going to be on spaceships a lot of time as a pirate. But that being said, in order to get the cargo, most of the time you're going to have to board that enemy ship. And as such, it's almost like a Marine type role, but you're just doing things a little bit more nefariously. You know, you're going to go on, steal the cargo, or maybe you're just going to go in there, help kill everybody on board, and then steal the ship. Pretty neat idea, pretty kind of cool. Now, there's consequences for being a pirate, as in you get like negative reputation and people try and hunt you down and blah, blah, blah. But it is an aspect of the game that's kind of fun, exciting, and if you ever kind of have those fantasies about living outside the law, that's a type of role that you could do without having to be a pilot. And then the last one that really comes to mind is being a bounty hunter. Now, most of the time, bounty hunting, you're going to still need your ship because you're going to need to get from a planet and then carry somebody back to wherever they need to go. That being said, though, you can just use your ship as a point A to point B transport and then actually just end up, you know, hanging out on planet side. You know, maybe you wait in bars. Maybe you just sit there and have a beer and wait. You've got this little computer on your wrist and you can see who's wanted. You then go track them down and bring them to justice. there's a lot of aspects to this game that aren't so focused on actually being a pilot of a ship. And I think you could get a lot of enjoyment out of this game without actually having to be that ace pilot. Now, it's important to note that you're not going to be able to avoid flying in ships altogether. But if you really hate piloting, you can catch a ride from destination to destination. Maybe that's on somebody else's ship. Maybe that's on an NPC, cruise liner, whatever it is. There's options to get around without you actually having to fly. So the first taste that we're going to really get of this FPS combat is going to be the FPS module. And it's slated for early 2015, probably around springtime. One thing that's cool is this is like a simulated environment. It's almost like a virtual game within the persistent universe. It's going to be there. It's always going to be there. So even if you just get in, you start playing this, FPS Arena Commander type module and you really enjoy it, you can still do that once the game actually releases. So the game overall is run on the CryEngine, and if you like other games that are on the CryEngine, you're probably going to enjoy this. I think Crysis is the one that comes to mind for everybody, but there's a lot of other games that are run on the engine too. It's going to be pulling influences from Counter-Strike, Rainbow Six, Delta Force, Killzone, and a few others they mentioned. It's going to be very tactical, stealthy, very multifaceted, a lot of different things that are taken into consideration. If you're a PlanetSide 2 player and you like running around at a max, there is going to be something in game called Titan Armor. And that armor is basically a 8-foot mech suit. You can imagine how terrifying that would be in the closed, cramped quarters of a spaceship. And one other thing to mention that's really cool that we don't really see in a lot of games is that we are going to be able to fight in zero-G. And that's awesome. You're going to be able to go in and actually take out a shield generator, then everybody's bouncing around from wall to wall. It adds a really exciting aspect to this game from that first-person shooter perspective. So the last thing is, I think a lot of people see Star Citizen and they see ships being sold for $300, $400, and they're thinking, good lord, this is like a really expensive game to get into. I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be like that, especially for you FPS guys that don't feel like actually flying much. You can get into the game with a starter ship for $30. That's pretty damn good, especially when you consider the Call of Duties and the Battlefields of the world are $60. There's no monthly charge or anything like that. Now, if you want to get into the game and get beta access, then you're looking at closer to $40. But one thing that's kind of cool is once you actually have that beta access, you can then just buy into the FPS module when it drops for an additional $5. So ultimately, you're talking about $15 or so less than a Call of Duty or Battlefield for a starter ship, some insurance, a hangar, beta access, and the FPS module. So if you guys have questions about other non-piloting aspects of this game, please bring them up, because this game is something I'm becoming really, really passionate about. And I like to get as many people into it as possible, not only for, my own selfish reasons of more people is typically better for gaming, and for my YouTube channel, but, I just think there's a lot that this game has to offer, and I think people may be looking at this as a flight sim and kind of just automatically putting it aside. So, if you have questions, opinions, something I didn't cover and you want to add, go for it. Otherwise, go forth, spread the good word. Non-piloting stuff can be really cool, and a lot of people are going to want non-piloting players out there to kind of help them, especially if they're kind of like me, who doesn't really trust NPCs until we see how good they actually are. So that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you all later. Take care.